2 of the 4 Americans kidnapped by gunmen on Friday when they drove into Mexico were found dead, and the 2 survivors, one male, one female, have returned to the United States. The freed Americans were transported back across the border to U.S. authorities. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price.
First, today we learned the very sad news that Mexican state and federal authorities recovered 4 U.S. citizens kidnapped on March 3rd in Matamoros, Mexico. 2 U.S. citizens were returned to the United States. The bodies of 2 other U.S. citizens killed in the same incident were also recovered. We're providing all appropriate assistance to them and their families, and we extend our deepest condolences to the family and loved ones of the deceased. We thank our Mexican and U.S. law enforcement partners for their efforts to find these innocent victims, and the task forward is to ensure that justice is done.
Have now been able to confirm that 2 of the 4 were killed.
That's correct.
And that the other 2 are now back in the U.S.
The
2 survivors.
The 2 survivors have since been repatriated back to the United States. That occurred with the assistance of our Mexican partners, with the assistance of our officials in Mexico. We are in the process of working to repatriate the remains of the 2 Americans who were killed in this incident.
Okay.
Matt, just as you said, the investigation is in its earliest days. I understand we may have more to share from the FBI at the appropriate time, but from the Department of State, it's important for us not to impinge on investigative equities, especially in an investigation like this that implicates the kidnapping of 4 Americans, the death of 2 Americans, and 2 Americans who survived what, by all accounts, must have been a traumatic and harrowing experience. So we don't want to get ahead of that investigation.
The kidnappings, believed to be shown here in screen grabs from video posted to social media, have put a harsh spotlight on U.S. concerns over gang violence in Mexico, with Tamaulipas being one of the most violent states. The 4 Americans were in a white minivan when they entered the border city of Matamoros, which now has a heavy presence of police and soldiers. Gunmen fired on the passengers shortly after they crossed into Mexico and then herded them into another vehicle before fleeing the scene, according to the U.S. Embassy in Mexico. U.S. media have reported that one of the Americans was traveling to Mexico to get cosmetic surgery. Authorities said a Mexican bystander was killed when the 4 were abducted, and a 24-year-old has been detained. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador expressed his condolences and pledged to bring the perpetrators to justice. But he also lashed out at what he cast as tabloid coverage of the incident and accused the media of not giving the same attention to killings of Mexicans in the United States. At the White House Tuesday, spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said U.S. officials were in touch with the families of the victims.
Attacks on U.S. citizens are unacceptable, no matter where or under what circumstances they happen. We will continue to work closely with the Mexican government to ensure justice is done in this case.
Authorities are still investigating how the 2 Americans died, and one Mexican official said the most likely explanation for the group's abduction was that they were mistaken for someone else.
Como la secretaria de Seguridad, se conformó un grupo interinstitucional. Como resultado de las acciones de investigación, fue detenido en flagrancia José N., de 24 años de edad, originario de Vallehermoso, Tamaulipas, quien se encontraba en funciones de vigilancia de las víctimas. Fueron encontradas en una casa de madera, cerca de un lugar conocido como La Lagunona, en el ejido El Tecolote, en Matamoros. Que la mañana de este martes fueron localizados los 4 ciudadanos estadounidenses privados de la libertad el pasado viernes en la zona centro de Matamoros, Tamaulipas. De ellos, 2 se encontraron sin vida, en tanto que 2 más, una mujer de nombre Latavia N., está ilesa, mientras que Eric N. presenta una lesión por herida de bala en una de sus piernas. Decirles además que antes del mediodía, autoridades mexicanas entregaron a autoridades estadounidenses la mujer que resultó ilesa y el hombre que se encuentra herido en el puente internacional de Bronzeville y Matamoros.
Todo parece ser que fue una confusión, pero eso nos lo irán concluyendo ya las investigaciones conforme vayan avanzando. Por cuanto a los fallecidos, precisamente se encuentran ahorita realizándole las necropsias de ley, porque después del trabajo del hallazgo intervienen peritos de la Fiscalía General de la República, de la Guardia Nacional, de la misma Fiscalía General de Justicia para trabajar de manera conjunta en el procesamiento de la escena del crimen.
Gracias, todos sentados, por favor. Gracias.